In China, a new spherical robot is helping police with security patrols and is equipped with advanced features. The fantasies of writers and filmmakers about robot police officers seemed far from reality. These images, soulless machines patrolling the streets of megacities, scanning faces, instantly identifying criminals, and never experiencing fatigue, were perceived as elements of science fiction. But the time has come when these scenarios are starting to become part of our reality. Increasingly, news headlines mention robot police, artificial intelligence in law enforcement, and next-generation surveillance technologies. And this is not a movie, this is our new reality, which is gradually spreading to more and more countries. From China to the United Arab Emirates, from South Korea to the United States, today in China, robot police officers have already become a familiar sight in major cities. At train stations, airports, and even in parks, one can encounter autonomous robotic patrollers. These machines are equipped with high-resolution cameras, facial recognition systems, microphones, and speakers for communication with citizens. They can detect suspicious behavior, identify wanted individuals, record offenses, and call in human officers if necessary. Some models are even capable of measuring body temperature and detecting individuals with signs of infection, as was the case during the pandemic. China is not just testing these technologies, it is deploying them on a large scale. According to local authorities, dozens and, in some regions, already hundreds of robots are patrolling streets and infrastructure facilities. These are not just machines, they are part of the national system of digital control. But China is not the only player in this race. In Dubai, autonomous police patrols, small vehicles with onboard computers, have been operating on the streets for several years. They can interact with citizens, scan documents, record violations, and even connect to Interpol databases. South Korea, Japan, Singapore, all are actively testing technologies for automating public order enforcement. Even in the United States, police departments are beginning to use drone robots and ground-based automata for patrolling, reconnaissance, and tracking criminals. And while some see this as progress and a step toward a safer future, others are increasingly asking troubling questions. What are we giving up by handing control and force over to soulless machines? Robot police officers have clear advantages. They do not get tired. They are not swayed by emotions. They do not accept bribes. Their reaction is instantaneous, and their memory is flawless. They can operate in high-risk zones during terrorist threats, mass unrest, epidemics, and disasters. They can be used for surveillance, for locating missing persons, for guarding borders and critical facilities. Moreover, thanks to neural networks and machine learning, they can detect potential threats before they even manifest, by behavior, facial expressions, movement patterns. All of this seems incredibly effective. But on the other hand, this is where the greatest threat lies. Because what is perceived as crime prevention can easily turn into dissent suppression. Robots do not distinguish between a criminal and an activist, between suspicious behavior and protest. And if the state wishes to use these technologies not only to maintain order but also to suppress freedom, it will have at its disposal the perfect tool, silent, ruthless, and morally indifferent. Already in China, robots record who is where, who meets with whom, who attends a protest. Their cameras are integrated into the social credit system, where every action of a citizen can affect their status. Imagine a world where every movement is tracked, every word is recorded, every emotion may be analyzed by an algorithm. And if the machine deems you dangerous, it sends a signal, instantly, without trial, without appeal. But even if we set aside the political dimension, there are also purely human risks. Robots make mistakes. Algorithms trained on limited data can malfunction, misidentify faces, or make false decisions. There have already been cases where people were detained by mistakes, simply because they resembled someone. Responsibility in such cases, the machine, the developer, the officer who trusted the algorithm, this area of accountability remains a gray zone and is legally unresolved. The psychological impact must also be considered. Even today, in cities with patrol robots, people often feel not so much protected as watched. This creates an atmosphere of anxiety, distrust, and constant pressure. We are losing our privacy, our ability to be ourselves, to relax. Everything is recorded. Everything is analyzed. Algorithms that evaluate our behavior do not take into account context, emotions, or individuality. They simply calculate the probability of deviation from the norm, and you are already under suspicion. And yet this process can no longer be stopped. Police robots are no longer science fiction or an experiment. They are a new wave in the evolution of society. Just as surveillance cameras were once introduced, just as drones arrived, now machines are appearing on the streets to replace officers. And over time, there will be more of them. They will be with us in airports, subways, on roads, in schools, at sporting events. They will record, analyze, recommend actions, and later, they will begin making decisions independently. Their intelligence will evolve. Their autonomy will increase. At some point, they will no longer be just tools in the hands of police departments, but an independent force with the right to act. Humanity now faces an important choice: how to implement these technologies in a way that truly serves society, rather than becoming a tool of oppression. A clear legal framework is needed. Oversight of development and usage is essential. Independent monitoring must be ensured. And most importantly, public dialogue is necessary. Because robots are not just a replacement for people, they represent a new philosophy of order, a new model of authority, a new ethics. And it is already entering our world. If nothing is changed, if we do not ask these questions, then one day we will wake up in a world where order is indeed perfect, but in that order, there will be no place for freedom, no room for spontaneity, no space for mistakes or second chances. There will only be the algorithm, cold, emotionless, unchanging. And then we will remember the times when a police officer was human, with fears, compassion, understanding, and the capacity for forgiveness. So, the future of robot police officers is not just a matter of technology. It is a matter of what kind of society we want to build, convenient and safe, or free and alive. And that decision must be made now, because the robots are already on the streets. And they are not going away. And yet, as police robots become part of the urban environment, a new, far more subtle and philosophical question arises: how will not only power, but society itself, change under the influence of these machines? What will happen to the trust between citizens and the state if an emotionless intermediary with cameras instead of eyes and microphones instead of ears stands between them? One of the most likely consequences will be the gradual alienation of people from a system they no longer understand and cannot challenge. You cannot reason with a robot. You cannot persuade it. You cannot explain the human factor. If you were running to the pharmacy for medicine and broke a traffic rule, the robot will not assess the context, it will simply log the violation. If you were a witness to a conflict and acted aggressively out of fear, the robot will not sense your emotional state. The machine does not decide based on empathy, but on code. Another danger is the so-called creeping invasion of boundaries. Today, robots stand on the streets. Tomorrow, they might be at our building entrances. The day after, inside our homes. There are already discussions about robots capable of entering private premises in the event of a terrorist threat or emergency. But who decides where the line lies between the right to security and the right to privacy? What guarantees do we have that a robot will not start observing those who simply do not look like the others? And who will monitor those who control the robots or design their intelligence? From a technological standpoint, progress cannot be stopped. Artificial intelligence is advancing rapidly. Cameras, sensors, lasers, lidars, quantum computing, all of this will only enhance the capabilities of robotic machines. In 5 years, they will not just patrol, they will speak, persuade, issue commands, diagnose, identify people by their gait, voice, or even body temperature. In 10 years, they may model crowd behavior, predict unrest, and preempt actions. In 20 years, they may even decide who is guilty and who is not, based on the analysis of your entire digital history. The future is already arriving. We see it through the eyes of cameras. Hear it in the voices of synthesizers. Feel it in the rhythm of mechanical footsteps on the pavement. Robots are already among us. They do not require rest. Do not ask questions.